Flightcast, a place where opinions aren't right or wrong, and where we can agree or disagree about movies, TV, and other assorted media because it's all subjective. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to what apparently is my 200th episode of this show, which is a little misleading because obviously if I had been on a somewhat more consistent schedule over the last number of years, I would have already hit 200, and also I do a bunch of other shows, so it's not quite the 200th episode of anything that I've done, well, like in general, but it is the 200th episode officially of this show, the main show that I have done. And how fitting that on this 200th episode of the Flightcast, I do a show where I basically drag Scooper Madness yet again and talk about how it is okay to like them all. For people who have been fans of me since Fans Without Borders, that I used to co-host with Brent over at Squadcast Media, you remember that was one of our hashtags. It's okay to like them all, and I will explain why as I talk about both Marvel and DC in one wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey of an episode today. I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very open-minded, and it's going to be positive. We're going to be aggressively positive today, as I am normally, about Marvel and DC, because it's okay to like them all. I'm going to reinforce that, along with it's all subjective. But before getting hot and heavy into that, always want to remind everybody listening to this show that this show and my other shows can be found at theflightcast.com or wherever you get your podcast, whether it is Apple Podcasts, whether it is on the Flightcast YouTube page where these episodes get posted on the regular, or whether it is Spotify or Pandora. You can find the Flightcast at any of those outlets or wherever your podcasts, wherever you get them from, whether it's a podcatcher app like Overcast or wherever. You can find the Flightcast. You can find this show, the main show, the Flightcast, on Mondays. You can find episodes of Flightbox on Wednesdays. Right now we're talking about Daredevil Born Again. Be prepared for another episode of that, talking about episode 7 this Wednesday after it drops on Disney+. And on Fridays, you can now catch Friday Flight, which is the official newish term for the feedback show, the listener feedback show, where you send in all your emails and your posts on Facebook and on the YouTube channel and whatnot, and we respond to them, we talk about them, we have a good old conversation about whatever it is that you want to talk about with respect to movies, TV, and other assorted media. Yes, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, that is our regular schedule now for Flightcast show recordings. And also want to take a moment to thank all of the supporters on patreon.com/theflightcast. Hope that you have been enjoying all the bonus content. Lately, I have been doing episodes of Flight Speed and Flight Review. In the last couple of weeks, I have reviewed the Hellraiser Quartet of Torment. That's all 4 of the theatrically released Hellraiser films. And just recently, yesterday, I dropped a new episode of Flight Review exclusive for patrons on Dunkirk. Yes, I mentioned and have been teasing that there are 2 Christopher Nolan movies. There were 2 Christopher Nolan movies, feature-length films, that I had not seen yet. I've now seen one of them, Dunkirk, and I talk all about it and have a nice little review, speak my mind, and just empty my thoughts with respect to that particular film that I did not see in theaters 7 or 8 years ago. Do I regret that? Now, after having seen the film and all of its 4K glory, am I sad? Just a little sad that I missed out on the glory of seeing that in the movie theater. Do I buy in to the elitism of one Mr. Christopher Nolan, the great auteur, or was I just perfectly fine with seeing it in 4K on my Vizio home theater setup? Find out at patreon.com/theflightcast. Sign up to be a flight officer, and you can listen to that episode along with all of my other episodes, all of my other bonus content that I've posted there as well. And I will just give you a tease ahead, as I've been doing now for the last couple of weeks. The next flight review episode that I'm going to do that is Patreon exclusive is going to be a Pixar movie, because I have a backlog with Pixar as well. Because here's the deal. With flight review episodes, the ones that I do here topside, when new movies come out, those are brand new ones that we're all seeing at the first time. The flight review episodes that are Patreon exclusive are movies that you have probably seen that I haven't. Because believe it or not, there's a lot of movies I have not watched that you have watched. And the next one is going to be a Pixar film. 2 weeks ago, I scared the crap out of myself with Hellraiser. Last week, I watched War Movie. This upcoming week, I'm going to break out the box of Kleenex and I'm going to watch Pixar, because you know what Pixar movies do. You know what they do. I have a backlog of Pixar movies. There's 9 or 10 Pixar movies that I actually haven't seen. And to be honest with you, the reason I haven't watched them or been in that big of a hurry to watch them is because I've seen all of the others, right? Here are the Pixar movies that I've seen. I've seen all 4 of the Toy Stories. Okay? Seen all of them. I saw Have I? Yes, I did. I no, I saw all but Toy Story 3 in the theater. I said I don't know, for whatever reason, didn't see the third one in the theater. I've seen A Bug's Life. I've seen both the Monsters movies, Monsters Inc. and Monsters University. I've seen Finding Nemo. I've seen the first Incredibles. I've seen the first Cars movie. I've seen Ratatouille. I've seen Wall-E. I've seen Up. I've seen Brave. I've seen Turning Red, and I've seen Lightyear, right? Lightyear was the last Pixar movie that I watched. I went to the theater to see that one. Oh, pardon me. I've also seen Coco. That's another one. In fact, Coco was the last one that I saw. Those are all the Pixar movies that I have seen. So that leaves a rather sizable list that I have not seen, and some notable ones, if you will. And the reason I haven't been in a hurry to see them is because, again, we know what Pixar movies do. Pixar movies are nothing if not emotional. They require, like, some build-up, if you will, to watch them. And I know good and damn well that if I put in a Pixar movie, I'm prepared to cry. I am. I'm prepared to cry. I'm prepared to have some type of emotional upheaval. This happens every time with every single Pixar movie. Is there a single Pixar movie that does not have a massively emotional moment in it? I don't think so. I really don't. But either way, I'm going to pick one. One of the ones that I have in my physical collection that I haven't watched yet, because there have been a couple of blind buys, because as I've mentioned before, when I blind buy movies, I'm pretty sure I'm going to like them. I don't buy things or get tickets to things that I don't think I'm going to like, right? I have a pretty good idea in my head. Hey, you know what? This interests me. I'm probably going to enjoy this on some level, right? Even Thor: Love and Thunder, my least favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe film, I still like the last third of it, so I don't 100% regret that ticket that I bought a couple of years ago to go see it. Anyway, I'm watching a Pixar movie this week. I don't know which one it's going to be. No, I take that back. I do know which one it's going to be. It's going to be a surprise, another surprise. A Pixar movie that I have not seen. And think of the ones that I listed that I have seen. In fact, I'll give you even further hint. The Pixar movies that I have not seen that are game for this week's particular watching are Incredibles 2. Haven't seen Incredibles 2. Haven't seen Cars 2 or 3. I have not seen either of the Inside Out movies, 1 or 2. I haven't seen The Good Dinosaur. I haven't seen Finding Dory. I have not seen Onward. I have not seen Soul. I have not seen Luca. I have not seen Elemental. Those are the Pixar movies I have not watched. Is there any that I'm missing? No, I think that's all of them. Yep, I've seen all the others. The ones that I just listed are the ones that I have not seen. So one of those movies that I just listed in that last list, I'm going to watch this week. And it's going to be emotional, and I'm going to post the review on patreon.com/theflightcast for my latest episode of Flight Review that is Patreon exclusive. So there you have it. If anybody has any ideas, like if you want to guess at all on which one it is that I may watch, or if you have a suggestion on which one it is that you think I should watch, I'm very curious about that one. Because Pixar, man, we can go all over the place with Pixar. But at any rate, stay tuned for that. Again, if you're a flight officer on patreon.com/theflightcast, you will get full access to that, plus all the other bonus content. Hope that you enjoy it. Thank you so much for subscribing, those of you who have been loyal patrons up to this point, and seriously hope that you are enjoying all of the now getting more consistent bonus content on patreon.com/theflightcast. All right, let's get into it. I want to preface all of this by letting you know exactly what the inspiration for today's episode is. It comes from a dumbass Threads post. And to be completely honest, to be completely clear with you, it's from a verified Threads account. This individual's name, I'm going to go ahead and name this person by name, because I want to make an example of this person, this individual, because I'm sure that this individual means well, but their behavior is precisely what I'm talking about with respect to tribalism and how toxic it can be within fandoms. This person, they go by the name of C. Anderson. Their account's name is The Real Ceased. All right, fair enough. And I actually saw 2 Threads posts. The first one that I saw that came across my feed was the first one where I was like, all right, you treading on thin ice. I don't understand why you gotta go at this particular subject like this. But the first thing that he posted 3 days ago, that they posted 3 days ago, was, quote, Daredevil has top fight choreo. No movie version of even Batman got hands like Matt Murdock. I said what I said. All right, C. Anderson with 968 some followers. Okay, you know what? You're welcome to feel however you feel. And of course, you got to add the I said what I said because you're begging for people to argue with you. Okay, I get that. Now, all of that, listen, you love the fight choreography for Matt Murdock in both the Netflix series and also what we've seen so far in Born Again. Okay, it is what it is. it's all subjective. You can feel that way, right? Do I feel like he was coming for the warehouse scene in BVS? Yeah, I do. I do. Do I feel like he was coming at like Batman in general with respect to his live action fight choreography? Yeah, sure, definitely. And if you want to stack it up against the Nolan movies, oh well, that's not even a contest. Batman's fight choreography in the Nolan movies is putrid. It's the one thing that Christopher Nolan doesn't do well. He does literally everything else well as like an incredible auteur. But he posted that post, and then after I let that one go and, let him have his opinion out in the wild or whatever, I saw his other post, which is what made me block him. Like, after I responded to him first and, quoted him and screenshot it, and then I blocked him. And here's what he said. He said, quote, "Say what you want about the MCU, but there has never been a DC film that highlights their universe of heroes and villains in one project on the same level. Just saying." End quote. Which, of course, prompted me to send him a response. And then before I blocked him, I screenshot what he posted and I reposted it myself. And I said, "Dear Marvel fans, this is unnecessary and a bad faith comparison. No one needs to tell DC fans that Marvel Studios has been better run than DC Studios, especially since the latter is barely 2 years old and its predecessor, DC Films, was an organizational train wreck. But for F's sake, can you just shut the F up with this tribalist garbage and leave fans who like the DCEU alone? We ain't bothering you. Even the cultists are more angry at James Gunn than you. Fandom is toxic enough without this BS. Now, if you think that what he said wasn't toxic, if you think that what he said wasn't tribalist, that's your business. You're welcome to disagree with me, but I'm sorry. You want to sit here and say what you want about the MCU, but there's never been a DC film that highlights their universe of heroes and villains in one project on the same level. And a number of you are probably going to go, well, where's the lie? He's not lying. That's absolutely true. DC has never had an Infinity War. They've never had an Endgame. They don't have anything like what they're promising in Doomsday. No, they have not. And we know why they haven't. The reason they haven't is because of bad management from Warner Brothers. We know that Warner Brothers has micromanaged the hell out of DC. We know that DC Films organizationally was a disaster, which led to the knee-jerk decisions they made with respect to Zack Snyder's films and the DCEU, and the incredibly aimless direction that the DCEU took after Walter Hamada took over. We know all of this. We're not morons. We know exactly what happened. We know all of this. But here's my question. Why is it necessary to say that? Why is it necessary to point that out? And you go to the comment section for this dude, and it's all manner of DC fans like, "I'm sad that you're right. Oh, it hurts that you're so right." Listen, you sadomasochistic twits. If you want to be a sad sack about DC, I don't understand why you have to run to a Marvel fan in order to get absolution, right? Does it make you feel better to go to a Marvel fan and let them just, bang you in the head with an aluminum bat, metaphorically speaking, with respect to how bad DC has been mismanaged up to this point? Does it make you feel better? Do you absolve yourself? Because all you're doing is just feeding into the bullshit tribalism that really has festered in the last 10, 15 years with respect to these fandoms, especially when it comes to live-action cinematic interpretations, right? And my initial response to this dude before I blocked him was, why is it necessary to come for DC just because you want to defend the MCU? Isn't fandom toxic enough without this toxic-ass tribalism nonsense? Defend the MCU, that's fine. I've been defending the MCU myself. But stop pitting it against DC. This isn't sports. It's movies, TV, and comics. Don't be like Chris Rock throwing heat where there doesn't need to be unless you want Will Smith to come slap the shit out of you. Metaphorically speaking. Tribalism sucks. Yeah, I threw that last one in there because I'm still on Will Smith's side with respect to that. You can go ahead and disagree with me all you like on that one. Will Smith has proved what I've said, or rather what LeVar Burton has said, about how there's no such thing as cancel culture, it's only consequence culture, and he's doing just fine now, isn't he? Anyway, I digress. Point is, why have MCU fans got to come for smoke when there doesn't need to be any? We're minding our own business. Okay, DC fans, we're sitting impatiently waiting the launch of the DCU. There's no need to come for us just because people are shitting all over your universe. And to be clear, I have defended you with respect to them shitting all over your universe. I've talked about the decisions that have been made. I've talked about how they've struggled to find a direction after the Infinity Saga. I've talked about how the Jonathan Majors situation has screwed things up and caused them to course correct, which they're doing now with RDJ as Doom and this massive plan to get the gangs back together for Doomsday and Secret Wars. I've talked about all that. I haven't mentioned DC other than to say, You don't need to be making the same knee-jerk decisions with the MCU that were sadly made with the DCEU. That's all I've said. Those are the only comparisons I've made. But the idea that you're going to sit there and go, you know what, Marvel's doing just fine because at least they pulled off Endgame. At least they pulled off Infinity War. DC could never. Get the hell out. Get the hell out with that tribalist bullshit. I'm censoring myself. Cable rules. Cable language rules. I want to say worse. I do. I absolutely want to say worse. And if this were Patreon, I would absolutely say worse and put up that NSFW tag. But I'm not. I'm staying civil as I can be with this toxic bullshit. It's ridiculous, and I hate seeing it. I don't like seeing fans like this. This guy is probably a nice person in real life, and there are a number of things that he's posted with respect to social political stuff and other things that I actually agree with him on. But I cannot abide by this. I cannot stick with this. If you're going to be a tribalist asshole, you're gone. I really don't have patience for that anymore. So he's out. But the silver lining of his bullshit-ass tribalist post on Threads is that he gets to be the inspiration for this particular episode because we've got news with respect to Marvel and DC to talk about. We have things to talk about that, quite honestly, are going to allow us to coalesce and remember that it is okay to like them all. Because for years I've been telling everybody, listen, you know what? DC is my preference. I have a bias for DC. Most certainly, DC Comics is what I grew up with first. Batman is my favorite superhero of all time, so obviously my preference is going to be for DC. I am far more jazzed and excited, if you will, or at least intrigued, cautiously optimistic about Superman on July 11th than I am about the Fantastic Four First Steps on July 25th. I'm going to see both. But my energy and my attention and my bias as a fan is all about July 11th. I am curious, and I want to see how the DCU starts, and I'm hoping that it starts strong because I want it to succeed. I want DC to succeed. But I am also not threatened by the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I am perfectly fine with Fantastic Four First Steps succeeding and hopefully helping to propel the MCU into what is going to be its new direction for the rest of the multiverse saga. We will see what happens. The great part about this is I can do both. I don't have to pick a side. I don't have to say it's either Superman or Fantastic Four. I don't have to say one or the other. If someone comes to me and says you can only watch one, which one are you going to watch? I get to look them in the eye and flip them off and go, I'm watching both, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. I'm going to watch both films, and I'm going to enjoy both films more than likely because I happen to enjoy the vast majority of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what DC has provided. Yeah, I own all of the MCU that has been commercially released. I own all of the DCEU that has been commercially released in physical media form. That's a lot of movies. And damn near all of them, in fact, yes, all of them are in steelbook form, glorious steelbook form. I've gone to the ends of the earth and gotten them from overseas, out of print copies, whatever have you. I enjoy both franchises to that end, and I am allowed to do so. And so this is all about enjoying both Marvel and DC. Bring them together. It's okay to like them all. Period. And having that mindset, having that open-minded ability means that I was able to go on Threads today and look at James Gunn's post from about 6 hours ago from the time of me recording this episode, and I could repost it gleefully because he said, today we celebrate hashtag Supergirl and all her various incarnations. Can't wait for you to see the latest version portrayed by the indomitable Millie Alcock in June 2026. Photo by Parisa Tagizade. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but it is a picture of Millie Alcock likely sitting in her trailer wherever Supergirl is filming, reading a copy of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, or at least she's posing with a copy of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. Now, of course, that's awesome in itself, but what's not awesome? The fact that she's wearing a black cloak, right? Like, it looks like she's wearing a black cloak, and why is that not awesome? Because more than likely, she's wearing the Supergirl outfit under the black cloak. She's hiding her costumed look from us, which, damn it. I mean, don't get me wrong, the way that she's holding the book, right, which I still need to read, and I'm going to read, and of course Tom King has been all over this as well, because it's his book. The cover art, the dust jacket for this book, has a clear image of the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow costume, which I suppose we could glean is probably going to look close to what Millie Alcock is probably actually wearing in this picture under the black cloak that she is wearing. But yeah, it's just a little bit of that's not nice. We know good and damn well she's in costume. We want to see what the costume looks like. Because in fairness, we've had a multitude, truthfully, a good handful of Supergirl designs over the years. I mean, you can go all the way back to Helen Slater in 1984, which she was not the problem with that particular Supergirl film, the first one that was made. We can look at the multiple looks that they gave Melissa Benoist on on the CW, that show, for 6 seasons. They changed her look up a couple of times, if I remember correctly. We can look at Sasha Calle's look with respect to how she was as Supergirl in The Flash, which I enjoyed her version of the character there, and I enjoyed the look that she had that was definitely based off of the Michael Wilkinson design for Henry Cavill's Man of Steel costume in that regard, right? We've had a number of different Supergirl looks, and obviously we're eager to see what Millie Alcox looks like, and of course they're going to hold that off for official photography, just as they did with David Corn's Wet Superman, right? Or maybe we'll get a glimpse of her in Superman in July. One of the two will more than likely happen, right? Maybe even both will occur. We will see. But this is awesome. Millie Alcock, once again, this is a part of marketing that I've talked about with respect to James Gunn, something that we really have not seen Kevin Feige do with the MCU, and he should do. This is something I would recommend Kevin Feige do, but it's a little different for the MCU because they really have established over the last 17 years their comic, right, their universe, if you will, right? The inspiration that they take from different parts of the Marvel universe in comics form to build the MCU the way that they have over the last 17 years, right? So there really doesn't have to be a whole lot of like derivation, if you will. Like in the case of James Gunn, he points to the source material because he is a fan and a student of the source material, and he wants us to understand the connection in terms of what they're adapting, right? That's why he's made recommendations on what to read for Superman. That's why he's recommending to us all to read Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow if we have not yet, for this film, for this next Supergirl film. And I will read it. I most certainly will read it, and I will review it, more than likely on Patreon for an episode of Flight Report, because on occasion I do review comics on Patreon as well. But this is awesome. Just a reminder, hey, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow in production, new Supergirl on its way. Yes, fantastic. Thank you, James Gunn, for continued cross-promotional marketing between your own cinematic universe that you're building with DC Studios along with Peter Safran and the source material, the comics themselves. That is the synergy that he has created so far in the first 2 years of DC Studios' existence between the comic creators and the actual medium that he's building within the DCU is awesome, and I really hope it pays off. And speaking of hoping that things pay off, DC Studios is definitely hoping that Superman pays off. And in particular, Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner, because we got word today that he is indeed going to play the role in Lanterns. This is a story that was broken by Deadline and Variety, and I'm reading the Hollywood Reporter version that just popped up a little bit ago, that says Lanterns, the upcoming DC Studios series for HBO, has cast Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, one of the characters known for being the Green Lantern in DC Comics mythology. Fillion is set to play Gardner in this summer's Superman and will reprise the role in the HBO series. Lanterns, of course, picked up last year from Chris Mundy, from Ozark, Damon Lindelof, from Watchmen and Lost, and comics writer Tom King, who's having a great day today. Between the Supergirl post and this, yeah, it says the trio are co-writing and executive producing the series, with Mundy serving as showrunner. And of course, as we know, Kyle Chandler is set to play Hal Jordan, joined by a new recruit to the Corps played by Aaron Pierre, John Stewart, of course. I don't know why it says the log line says that show will see Alex Weprin. Come on, Alex, you've written comic stuff before, you know it's John Stewart. Whatever, it is what it is. But two intergalactic cops drawn into a dark Earth-based mystery as they investigate a murder in the American heartland. Other notable cast members: Jason Ritter, Kelly MacDonald, Purna Jagnathan, and Ulrich Thompson also on the cast list. And also, I read that Jasmine Cephas Jones, the daughter of the late great Ron Cephas Jones, is also going to be cast in this show as well. Another effort from DC Studios to expand its film franchise to premium TV, following The Penguin, which debuted on HBO last year, to positive reviews. Right, that's the story, if you will. But here we have a scenario where DC Studios, right off the bat, I mean, James Gunn has told us interconnectivity. That is the name of the game with respect to the movies, with respect to the shows, and with even respect to the animated content as well within the DCU. And I really haven't seen any reactions from any of you or fans to this particular news, but I think we have talked in the past with respect to tonal changes within the products inside of the DCU, right? And how do you balance that? We've seen other universes, the DCEU included, try to balance this, and it hasn't always been quite as clear-cut, quite as seamless, if you will. But this is a case where, the tone of Superman, I mean, depending on what you hear from these test screenings, depending on the leaks that you may not want to know about, right? It gets all over the place as far as what the tone of this particular film could be. So we're really left to our own devices and to what we know of James Gunn's, filmography and his style to inform us on what type of tone Superman is going to take, right? But we've seen the bowl cut, we've seen the uniform, we've seen the way that Nathan Fillion looks like in promotional art and in that first teaser trailer. So we have a pretty good idea of what that's going to look like. And it doesn't look like it matches the first promo image that we saw of Kyle Chandler and Aaron Pierre in Lanterns. And you know what? That's a good thing. At least I think it's a good thing, personally, because I don't think that everything in the DCU should have the same tone. I don't think that it should be just completely homogenous all the way through, right? Like, there should be some stylistic differences and tones between the creators and the showrunners and the directors and the writers. There should be. Like, there should be a wealth of diversity with you. I realize diversity is such a buzzword these days, and not everybody likes that word. Tough shit if you don't like that word. Diversity is the name of the game. Diversity is good business. And a diversity of styles can help prolong your franchise and, endear it to a larger audience, right? Lanterns, the logline of Lanterns does not sound or look or feel like what Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner looks, sounds, and feels like. We haven't heard him yet, but we're going to pretty soon. In the Superman teaser, in the Superman trailer, right? Like, there definitely seems to be something of a clash there. So the idea that both of these stories are going to take place in the same universe, but they're going to have different tones. You're going to get something different from Lanterns than you're going to get from Superman. I applaud that, and I think that's great. I think with respect to the idea of having two different tones in the same universe, it really does represent the cultural diaspora, not just in terms of the people involved, but also in terms of the locales and the storytelling that you have. What Tom King and Chris Mundy are going to do with this show, as opposed to what James Gunn is going to do with Superman, can all happen within the same universe and yet be very different in feel, right? We shouldn't watch Lanterns and feel the same way that we feel when we watch Superman, and vice versa. But I like the commitment to connectivity. You've got a Green Lantern in one film. You absolutely may as well have them connected in the show with the other Green Lanterns, because it just makes sense. They're both inhabiting this world at the same time, and if things are happening within the same universe, why wouldn't they interact? Especially knowing what we know about the Green Lantern Corps and how they operate, it makes sense that Guy would at some point interact with Hal and John, especially if John is a new recruit and everything going on in this particular iteration of the DC universe. So, and it also speaks to the idea that there is communication going on, right? Tom King, obviously, in the thick of all this stuff, being the writer of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and now being involved in this Lantern series, he is one of the many comic creators that James Gunn has tapped and is involved with in terms of building this world out and fleshing it out for the cinematic screen, for the big and the small screen in this regard. And, the fact that HBO, or that Lanterns is going to be an HBO series, places a higher premium on it than if it were just Max. We've talked about that before. And yeah, I like this. I really do like this connectivity, if you will. I like the meshing of styles, and I like the fact that we're going to get a different tone in Superman than we are in Lanterns, but we're going to have some connective tissue, some direct connective tissue, not just some guesswork, right? Not only have they told us directly that they're connected, but we're going to get a Lanterns connection between the two in the form of a bridge with Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner going in between the movie and in the show, balancing the two tones, if you will, right? And again, the audience for Superman is going to be different than the audience for Lanterns, and you're going to get some overlap. Like, a bunch of us are going to watch both, right? But as far as the general audience is concerned, you're going to have preferences. You're going to have people. The hope is that you have people that are like, well, I like Superman better. That was cool. Well, I like Lanterns better. That was great and gritty and like true detective science fiction style, right? Like, the hope is that you get both of those tones between the general audience reaction. And I really liked so far that there doesn't seem to be this fear or this reluctance to try and connect these projects even before the DCU has officially launched yet, right? Before Superman is released, they're already telling you, well, Guy Gardner's going to be back. He's going to be in the Lantern show, right? So hopefully we'll get to continue down this path. Hopefully Superman gets off to a great start. And, we can already broach that subject of, well, they're going to cross the streams, right? This is all happening in the same universe. We're not worried about different tones. We're going to cross the streams, and, hopefully it all works out. Now, if we're being honest, as far as the MCU is concerned, That's a lesson that it took them a while to learn with respect to interconnectivity between their movies and their TV series, right? Because most of us remember the days of Marvel Netflix, those good old Ike Perlmutter days, where there was this weird reluctance to connect what was going on in Hell's Kitchen and Harlem and wherever Jessica Jones and Danny Rand were, right? There was this reluctance to connect the world of the Defenders, if you will, with the world of the Avengers. The Defenders would reference the movies all the damn time, but the movies would never reference the existence of the Defenders. And, depending on who you talk to, there's even some that believe that they didn't connect to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Agent Carter all that as well as they could have, as strongly as they could have either. But either way, this was a weird sticking point with the MCU back in the day because it didn't seem like there was this communication, like this grand plan with respect to what they were doing with the Netflix shows and what they were doing with the MCU. And a lot of us wanted that full connection and didn't really get it until now. And yeah, that is a lesson, a hard lesson that Marvel had to learn. And, I know plenty of people like Brent and others are going to put all of it on Ike Perlmutter and say, well, and Feige wanted to do it, but there were issues. Well, there were other issues, I think, obviously, organizationally, with respect to that. But that's neither here nor there because now, after 17 years, Marvel has learned that lesson. Marvel Studios is fully connecting their television series to their theatrical exploits, and it's awesome. Well, I think it's awesome anyway, and I think a number of you listening to this show probably think it's awesome. But apparently, we got some bluebirds in the aisles, and this makes absolutely no damn sense to me whatsoever. Now, before I dive into this particular topic, spoiler warning. This is a spoiler warning for anybody that has not seen Daredevil Born Again up to this point. I mean, at least through episode 5. This directly connects to something. We're talking about something that happens in episode 5. So I'm giving you fair warning, spoiler warning for Daredevil episode. If you have not seen up to Daredevil Born Again episode 5, if you've not listened to Flightbox where I talked about it last week, this is your warning. I'm about to talk about not a massive spoiler, but a connective tissue spoiler that happens in that show. Okay, ready? Warning, final warning, here we go. All right. For those of us that have seen Daredevil Born Again through episode 5, we know that Mohan Kapoor, the actor who plays Yusuf Khan in Ms. Marvel and the Marvels, reprises his role in that episode, the bank robbery episode with Matt, where they deal with the Irish bank robbers. And quite honestly, it's an awesome episode. It's a really awesome bit of chemistry between Mohan Kapoor's Yusuf Khan and Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock that really powers through the entirety of the episode. And I didn't think it was going to last the entire episode. I thought for sure that Yusuf was just going to make one bit appearance, make the Miss Marvel references, and then be on his way. But no, this was an actual connective tissue episode where a major character from another Marvel series spent an entire episode thwarting bank robbers with the titular hero. And in a crazy way, what we have with this particular episode is we have potentially what we're going to see with Guy Gardner being in Lanterns, right? Because we talk about how different the two tones of the movie Superman and Lanterns, the show Lanterns, is going to be on HBO. Well, think about how different the tones are between Ms. Marvel and the Marvels, honestly, and Daredevil Born Again, right? Very different tones, but they all happen in the same world on the same Earth, okay? The same Earth that Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, exists in Hell's Kitchen. His Hell's Kitchen, same place that Ms. Marvel's Jersey City takes place in, right? Same universe, same timeline, same everything that they've been through, okay? Right? This is their world. So connective tissue is understood at this point, right? And we've already seen it in between the shows and the movies and some of the other MCU TV shows proper, the ones that have released on Disney Plus, and we've definitely seen it in full force here, but this is a tonal shift, right? I mean, Matt Murdock and the tone of this Daredevil series is not the same as Ms. Marvel. Now, I don't want to make it seem like Ms. Marvel is just straight comedy and complete nonsensical whimsy, because it's not. Ms. Marvel actually has a lot of poignant, a lot of emotional moments, and a lot of cathartic and cultural moments within that show. It really does. And I really am glad that I watched that show before seeing the Marvels. I've mentioned that many times, and if anybody wishes to hear my review on Ms. Marvel, again, patreon.com/theflightcast. There is a Flightbox episode dedicated to that I did same time I did my review topside for the Marvels movie the week that it came out. But at any rate, you're seeing a tonal difference in terms of two different tonally, disparate characters in the MCU coming together in one person show, right? Now, this does not preclude the possibility of Matt Murdock ever showing up in Ms. Marvel. It could most certainly happen. And apparently that's what fans have a problem with, because I got on threads today and saw all manner of dissension going, don't put Ms. Marvel in Daredevil. Don't ruin that show with her ridiculousness. She's too hokey and young and silly for his show. Keep it serious. Keep it heavy. I find this hilarious because, first of all, aren't the MCU fans the same ones that told us DCEU fans that we were fans of a murderverse and that it was too dark and too gloomy and too dreary and we needed more lightheartedness, we needed more jokes, we needed more humor, right? Remember when Civil War came out 5 weeks after BVS and all the critics told us Marvel shows us how it's done, right? Remember when you told us that $1 billion, the way to it was to be nicer to your audience, was to be happier to your audience, to give your audience a brighter picture, to give your audience, more smiles and more jokes and quips and one-liners and banter and all that, right? Remember when you told us that? And now what are you telling us? Now you're telling us that you want the darkness. You want the darkness of Matt Murdock and the Devil of Hell's Kitchen, and you don't want cutesy-wootsy Miss Marvel to ruin that. Well, let's put aside your blatant hypocrisy, your ironic hypocrisy for one moment, MCU fans, and let's focus on the fact that what you're literally railing against is something that you asked for years ago. We all wanted this, right? We all, as Marvel fans, as MCU fans, wanted connectivity, didn't we? I mean, maybe some of us didn't. Maybe some of us wanted, maybe some of you wanted Marvel Netflix to remain distant and separated from the rest of the MCU. I did not. I wanted some mention of Hell's Kitchen. I wanted somebody. I didn't even need a whole lot. I just needed Tony Stark to read a news headline that said, "Strange things going on in Hell's Kitchen," and the hero of Harlem. Right? Could Sam Wilson be reading a paper, or can Rhodey be reading about that or something? Yes, I wanted the black characters in the Avengers to read about the black man in Harlem, saving the day. Yes, I wanted that. I did want that type of connective tissue, something to that regard. And we never got it. It was always a one-way street with respect to Marvel, Netflix, and the MCU. And now it isn't anymore. Now, objectively speaking, it 100% isn't. We have a situation where Daredevil, Charlie Cox's Daredevil, Matt Murdock, I mean, granted, he was already in Spider-Man No Way Home. That happened. That absolutely happened. This Matt Murdock that we've been watching in Daredevil Born Again, the same Matt Murdock that was representing Peter Parker in Spider-Man No Way Home. Yes, that happened. That connective tissue to the movies already there. But just to further reinforce that, he has now actively had Yusuf Khan, Ms. Marvel's father, in a full episode of his show. And Yusuf Khan also, not only being in all 6 episodes of Ms. Marvel, was also heavily featured in the Marvel's feature film a couple of years ago, right? So we're talking about full connectivity here, and you're worried about what? You're worried about tonal shift? You're worried that somehow the youthful banter of Ms. Marvel is going to permeate itself into Daredevil's world and weaken what's been a fantastic series all the way up through these 6 episodes, and with 3 more to go, that it's just going to weaken everything. Get the hell out of here. You got to be kidding me. This is what I'm talking about, right? Fans can talk about how they want connectivity and they want things to be connected within their own universe, and then when it happens, it's the worst thing in the world. They're like, no, we don't want you to poison what we have. We don't want you to ruin this or to get rid of that. It's not ruining anything. What is it ruining? You really think that whatever connection they make, that if Ms. Marvel, like if Kamala Khan, if Iman Vellani's Kamala Khan shows up at any point in Daredevil, you think that all of a sudden that oh no, all the like, let me throw out a hypothetical here. I'm not predicting anything. I'm not even saying this is going to happen. Let's say hypothetically that Angela, Hector's niece, I bet more spoilers, okay? More spoiler warnings for Daredevil Born Again, okay? More spoiler warnings. All right, here we go. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that Angela, Hector's niece, gets a hold of that amulet and does what a number of us think she's going to do and becomes the White Tiger on her own. Now, let's say she gets into a jam with Muse or somebody else that she can't get out of, and Kamala is the one that saves her ass, right? And maybe even just to go further, and I think Anthony Dorsey was the one suggesting this. I forget if it was he or Phil that suggested this. But let's go even further and say that after Kamala saves Angela, she gives her a F yeah, or you effing okay, or something to that effect, right? Like she just curses openly in the middle of the show. Come on. Is that going to ruin either Daredevil Born Again or Ms. Marvel? I think not. I think if you really have a stick up your ass, it'll ruin it for you, to be very honest with you. But to me, I feel like we haven't seen this before, right? As far as this interconnectivity and this merging and meshing of different styles and tones within the same universe, we really have not seen that effectively done before because there has been resistance by these studios to do it in the past. We have objective data on this, not just in terms of Marvel barely doing it and really trying to do the bare minimum, not even really getting to that bare minimum level. We've also seen DC flat out exclude it, ignore it, right? The closest that we saw DC even handle the connectivity between the movies and the shows was when they decided to, at the last second, put Ezra Miller in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And that was awesome. That was amazing. That was a great scene between them and Grant Gustin and their different versions of Barry Allen. Like, that was really surreal, and that was a great moment. That was incredible. We talked about it endlessly on our review of Crisis on Infinite Earths that we did for DC TV Squadcast way back in the day, right? This is going back to early 2020, just months before the pandemic started, right? It was an amazing moment, right? But that was it. Like, what other connectivity did we have with respect to the shows? And until now, right, there's connectivity in the Batman epic crime saga between the Batman and the Penguin. All right, cool, but we're talking about the massive shared cinematic universe. They never thought to do that with the DCEU, not on a regular basis. Or maybe they did, and it was one of the many plans that DC Films screwed up and ended up getting scrapped by Walter Hamada, Toby Emmerich, and their cronies. Whatever, it is what it is. We're in the DCU era now. James Gunn has got his plans, and Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios clearly have their plans. Now, I have no idea if they actually intend to put Kamala Khan and Ms. Marvel in Daredevil. And I don't know if they're going to have Matt go over to that show. It could happen. It most certainly could happen. I would like to see a second season of Ms. Marvel. I enjoyed the first season. Whether they decide to do a second season or not, I don't even know if that's in the plans because I haven't looked in depth into Marvel's plans and what all the people, all their fans on Reddit and whatnot are saying. But considering that he was already in She-Hulk, which I still need to watch, I don't see what would preclude him from being in Ms. Marvel. And I don't see why both of those shows can't exist in the same universe and cross the streams on occasion without fans getting worried that it's going to ruin one of the shows. It's not going to ruin the show. If you think that bank robbery episode, and if you think that Yusuf having a altered bobblehead of his daughter as a superhero on his desk, if you think that ruined the tone of that episode, let alone the show, come on, seriously. Like, you know what? It's all subjective. You can feel however you want, but don't ever complain about connectivity ever again if something like that bothers you, because this is what it's supposed to be. The people who make Ms. Marvel, the people who make the Marvels, the people who make Daredevil Born Again should not be beholden to exactly the same tone that we have in Avengers or that we have in any of the other MCU projects, whether it's television or film. They should all be able to tell their own stories within the same universe. And I realize that after 17 years, Marvel has developed a tone, but Daredevil is different than the tone of the rest of the MCU largely. And now you're trying to integrate it in. So that means that you are now dabbling in something that DCU was trying to start from the get-go. You are dabbling in the idea of, hey, we're taking a different tone show and placing it into our fantastical universe. Let's see how it all works out. Nothing wrong with that. Me, a fan like me, I have been clamoring for that. And I am glad that Marvel is doing that. I don't know how far they're going to take it. But without even having seen She-Hulk, I'm glad that Matt Murdock is in it. I can't wait to see what he did in it. I know all of you have seen it. I know that the vast majority of you have seen it, right? I'm sure there's a few of you that have not seen She-Hulk as I have. But, and I've seen the images. I don't have full context for what happened or what he did. I have an idea of what might have happened on some level, but I don't have the full picture yet until I actually get caught up on She-Hulk, which I will. But I'm glad Matt's in that show. I'm glad he's got his own show. And I'm glad Yusuf was in his show. It's called Connective Tissue. It's called fleshing out your world and making it truly interconnected, not having any guardrails between any of your projects if they're all supposed to be happening on the same Earth. They're all supposed to be happening in the same reality, right? Not everything has to be multiversal. I understand that we're about to dive headfirst into multiversal with Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. I get that. I understand that. But as far as what you've built up now to this point in the MCU, interconnectivity is not a bad thing. It's not something that should be shunned, especially if you were anybody that was asking for it way back in the day during the Marvel Netflix era. This is what you wanted. This is what we wanted. The idea that you would complain about it now is asinine, and don't call it straw man. Just go on social media and see. You know, fans are nothing if not fickle. I saw these posts. And I know a number of you did as well. People just outright terrified of the idea, and it's like, get over yourselves. Seriously. It's all one world, and it's all a different brand of heroes dealing with their own situations. You know, obviously Ms. Marvel's dealing with what she's got over in Jersey City. Matt's dealing with what he's got over in Hell's Kitchen in New Jersey. Like, it is what it is. And New York City proper in that regard. So, it is what it is. But both the MCU and the DCU are showing signs that they are willing to test the waters and cross the streams with respect to the different tones of their shows and their movies and really establish full connectivity. Time will tell if it ultimately works out with the MCU, and time will really tell if it actually works out with the DCU. But so far, I applaud all of these creatives, and I applaud James Gunn and Peter Safran and Kevin Feige and Louis D'Esposito and everybody involved at Marvel Studios. I applaud everyone at both DC and Marvel Studios for committing to this idea. Bravo. I hope it works out for the both of you, because I enjoy all that shit. Because once again, it's okay to like them all. And before I sign off for this week, I want to tell you about another thing that it is okay to not like, and that is Scooper Madness. Because as any one of us could have predicted, they're coming for both of our fandoms. And they're splashing the both of us with clickbait, the likes of which we've never seen. Seriously. And it's really ramping up with the DCU because of all these Superman test screenings, and there's stuff coming out on the DCU Leaks Reddit and different announcements, or, you know, not official announcements that are being made. And look, I will say this. I'm not going to mention the casting announcement that was spoiled, if you will, or you know, that was made known a couple of days ago, right? You know, because one thing for sure, it was not verified, still has not yet been verified as of the time me recording this episode. That particular casting decision, if it is real, has not been verified by any of the trades or James Gunn. So I'm still not sold that it is actually happening. However, it appears to come from test screenings, and it appears that some members of Scooper Madness were aware of it before one of them decided to break it for the rest of us. But again, this is what I say about Scooper Madness, right? Personally, I don't consider that particular piece of information to be a spoiler. Dave the Film Junkie talked about this the other day on his Patreon, and I agree with him when he says that he doesn't really consider casting news to be a spoiler, especially when it's a bigger name, and I'm not going to mention who. If you already know the spoiler, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say it out loud. I'm not going to say it on this show, and I'm not going to say it on Flight Chat or on Friday Flight, to be honest with you. Just to throw that out there. Until it becomes official, I'm not saying shit. I'm not saying anything. So that's actually not up for discussion on Friday Flight, just to keep that safe for anybody else involved until it actually does become official, until the trades or James Gunn actually says so. Before Friday, if any of the trades or James Gunn actually confirms it, then we can talk about it. Until then, not so much. But I don't consider it a spoiler either, truthfully, you know, and even though I don't consider it a spoiler, I'm still going to be respectful for people that do, but I don't agree with you that it's a spoiler, because we were going to find out, and it's casting news, and for a name quite as popular as that particular name, I don't see how you're going to be able to hide that. Not from us. General audience is fine, because general audience does not follow this shit 24/7, 365 like we all do, right? So for us, information is a lot different. And casting information, what spoiler is that telling us? It doesn't tell us anything about the plot, doesn't tell us anything about the story, it doesn't tell us anything even about how that individual will play the particular character that they've allegedly been cast as, right? It doesn't tell us anything. We're making our own assumptions, we're making our own judgments, and that's what we're really upset about, right? You're really upset because now you're left to your own devices, and your imagination is thinking, oh, what if they do this with it, or what if they do that with it, or what if I don't like this, or what if I don't like that? Well, that's a you problem. But the actual information, if it is real, I don't consider to be a spoiler. That being said, if you are somebody that does consider it a spoiler, well then once again you learn a hard lesson about Scooper Madness. And the lesson with Scooper Madness is very simple. At best, they're spoilers. At worst, they're liars. At best, they're telling you something that you may not have wanted to know, that is a real detail about one of the movies that's coming out. At worst, they're outright lying to you. And there are lies being peddled. There's stuff being thrown out there, right? With respect to I talked about this before about how the Russos are going to be watchdogged by Kevin Feige. Bullshit. None of them can decide on whether or not Superman is good or bad because they keep flip-flopping in terms of test screenings, right? Each time one comes out. Yep. Bullshit. And now there's another one coming out that says Avengers Doomsday's production started, but not filming. They're still building sets. Filming only starts in April, and they still don't have a finalized script. Okay, here's the thing about that. First of all, this was quoted as being from a credible leaker, Daniel RPK. Nope, absolutely not. You were done the moment you posted that. That's why I posted Daniel RPK is not credible, period. But beyond that, never mind all the times he's been blatantly wrong and he's grifted and lied to people all the time. Listen to what he says, allegedly. That it started production, but it's not filming. They're still building sets because filming only starts in April and they still don't have a finalized script. What does that sound like to you? Does that sound like a scoop? Does that sound like important information? Like, oh my goodness, it's in production, but they haven't started filming yet. The movie doesn't come out until 2026. The idea that they haven't started filming and that they're building sets, ooh, what a scoop. No, nothing at all. It's no-brainer, truthfully. Again, not for the general audience, but for those of us that follow this news and follow this shit on a regular basis, right? That's not a big deal. And it's also not a big deal that they still don't have a finalized script. And so what? And we're talking about the MCU that has perfected the assembly line process to the point where they will literally change things like the week of release, right? They will reshoot. I mean, look, it's funny that this account on Threads, supercon_officials, that posted the credible leaker Daniel RPK, they just happened to use the GIF of Avengers Infinity War from the trailer where Hulk is in the Battle of Wakanda. When was Hulk in the Battle of Wakanda? Oh, that's right. That was changed. And again, for those of you that are not aware of this, if you want to see the deleted footage of what was originally going to happen in the Battle of Wakanda, which was that Banner was in Veronica, the Hulkbuster armor, and he's having an argument. He's having a come to Zod meeting with Hulk in his head, and Hulk decides that he's going to emerge, and Hulk is what busts out of Veronica, busts out of the Hulkbuster armor, and then joins the Battle of Wakanda. That's what was originally supposed to happen. That did not happen in the theatrical version of Infinity War because Marvel changed that on the fly. They do that all the time. So, the idea that they still don't have a finalized script at this point in time when the movie's not out until sometime next year, big whoop. Not a scoop. And certainly not credible. All RPK did here was just put together a couple of sentences that any one of us could have logically gleaned from the situation at hand with respect to the production on Avengers Doomsday. It's nothing. And yet this dude probably still has a Patreon, probably still grifting people. He's been ripping people off for years, but they're coming for the both of us because if it's not scoops about Avengers Doomsday, then it's scoops about test screenings for Superman and how this is going and how that is going. They smell blood in the water with both of our fan bases, Marvel and DC fans. They smell blood in the water and they want our attention and they want to stoke the fire and they want to get us all worried and they want to get us all afraid and they want us all in the same, cowering in the same corners, hoping for information to glean from them like, oh, they're our savior. Let's listen to Scooper Madness. Let's listen to Disgrace. Let's listen to Chattanooga FBI. Let's listen to the rep because they know what they're talking about. They're going to keep us sane and they're going to give us what's real and they're going to tell us the truth. Bullshit. Trust none of them. No one. Scooper Madness. Again, at best, spoilers. At worst, liars. Do you want them spoiling things that you didn't want to know about in the movie for you because you're that impatient? Or do you want them outright lying to you and then you get there and discover, oh, they've been full of shit this entire time? Because they're going to do one or the other. They're either going to spoil you or they're going to lie to you. Are you good with either one? If so, you know what? Happy trails. Best of luck to you. I don't like either. I will look at information at my own pace. If something actually comes out from like a studio leak or a controlled leak, which I still 1000% believe happens with these studios. I think controlled leaks are a thing. That thing with Daredevil last week that I'm not going to mention, but that thing with Daredevil last week, controlled leak. Do not tell me that wasn't one. If it means I'm wearing tinfoil for just 1 second of my life, that's fine. But you're telling me that we were able to see that clearly, and that wasn't on purpose. All of a sudden they're just like, well, let's not put a cloak on it. Let's not hide it. No, they meant for us to see that. And I'm not going to mention what it is in case you haven't seen it and don't know what we're talking about. But those of you that have seen it and do know what I'm talking about, don't tell me that wasn't on purpose. Just all of a sudden, that's not covered. All of a sudden, that's not hidden. All of a sudden, outdoors, we are just able to clearly see that? No, absolutely not. Controlled leak, unless it's something like that. If it comes from any of Scooper Madness, if it comes from any of these sources, well, I heard this, or my father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate that works for Kevin Feige said this, or the second key grip on the third day of shooting over at DC Studios said that. No, bullshit. Absolutely not. Do not trust Scooper Madness as far as you can throw them with anything. Okay, there's a big thing. There's talking about the Blade movie has been officially canceled. Now look, however we feel about the strife about the Blade movie being canceled or whether or not it's in production, right? However we feel about the actual Blade movie production, do not buy that it has been canceled until there is official word that it has been canceled. If Feige tells you it's been canceled, okay. If it doesn't show up on any, if he skirts the question and, just doesn't address it and all of a sudden all these other movies and stuff come out and there's no mention of Blade, okay, that's different. But as far as being told by Scooper Madness, it's over. No, screw that. Absolutely not. They're trying to wind you up. It's emotional gaslighting in that regard because they want your attention and they want you a captive audience for their bullshit at all times. Don't listen to it on either side, right? I feel like back in the day, this used to be primarily a DC fan problem because they really came after us during the days of the DCEU. Now they're coming after both of us. Hot. And maybe they already were with respect to the MCU, because they were already feeding information about different projects. But I do remember fans saying that it was more tight-lipped and buttoned up over at Marvel back in the day, and now it doesn't seem to be the case, allegedly, right? It seems that the sharks have really sharpened their teeth for both fan bases, whether you're an MCU fan or a DCU fan, right? And maybe you are already a DCU fan because you have faith. You have that much faith in what James Gunn and Peter Safran and DC Studios is going to do, which is great. That's fine. It's all subjective. I am cautiously optimistic about his universe, and I want it to succeed. I'm rooting for it to succeed. But either way, Scooper Madness, trust never, as in my humble opinion, right? I can only tell you what I think. It is all subjective. Perhaps you disagree, but I see the sharks circling, and I see them coming for both of us, and this is just yet another reminder, don't listen to shit that they say. Wait for THR, wait for Variety, wait for Deadline, wait for James Gunn and or Kevin Feige to tell you something. Or I guess in Kevin Feige's case, it won't be directly him. It will be the Marvel Studios account on social media, because they've got accounts all over social media. When they post something official, like they just did for the Avengers Doomsday casting announcements, that's what you take as gospel. You take that just as gospel as you do a James Gunn post or a James Gunn tweet or wherever it is, right? That's the even level for that. And then beyond that, that's level 1, is the actual heads of the studios. Level 2, just behind them, are the trades. Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline. If it comes from them, all right. You can 99% take that to the bank. Everybody else, liars. Bullshit. Throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. And that includes My Time to Shine Hello. That includes Viewer Anon. That includes all of the other scoopers that would just love for you to be on their hook on a regular basis so that they can string you up like Pinocchio and play with your emotions as a fan on a regular basis just for the sake of attention. And it does not matter if they're right once or if they're even right twice, because a broken clock is right twice a day. But it's still a broke-ass clock. Plain and simple. Scooper Madness is a broke-ass clock. End of story. So, don't listen to it. Leave it alone. That's all I got to say about that. That's your PSA on Scooper Madness for this show. And I think that'll do it for this particular episode of the Flightcast, my 200th episode, my official 200th episode of podcasting this particular show. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for entertaining my rants with respect to Marvel and DC, and just always fighting the good fight against the tribalism, and always reminding everybody that we are allowed to enjoy both franchises, right? Whether one has been more successful than the other, we don't need to be reminded of that, but we can enjoy the both of them for whatever it is that they provide us that we enjoy, and Scooper Madness will always suck, right? Either way. But if you have any thoughts with respect to any of that, you want to talk about Marvel DC with respect to, what I mentioned, other than the one thing that I said is off the table that I don't want to mention, that I don't want to spoil for people in that regard. If you want to talk about any of that, or if you want to talk about Scooper Madness and your thoughts on that, or anything else with respect to movies, TV, and other sort of media that you want to chime in on for Friday Flight, you know where to find me on Blue Sky at Flightcast, also back on Threads and Instagram at The Flightcast. There's also the Flightcast Facebook page, and of course I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. And don't forget to come back to theflightcast.com on Wednesday for the next episode of Flightbox, where I will be talking about episode 7 of Daredevil Born Again, and then get all of your emails and feedback in for Friday Flight by this Friday, April 4th, noon Eastern Daylight Time. That is your deadline to get emails in for the next episode of Friday Flight. We'll try out another beer, and we'll get some conversation going with respect to whatever you guys want to talk about. All right. Take care. Stay safe out there. Have a great week. And I will see you all next time. Take it easy.